Here's everything you might have missed in She-Hulk Episode 7. Welcome back, you Marvel maniacs, to our weekly breakdown of She-Hulk. This week's episode introduced some deeply silly Marvel deep cuts, confirmed a theory, and most importantly gave us the phrase hurtin' for a yurtin'.
I'm hurting for a yurtin'.
We're gonna break down everything you might have missed in just a moment, but to do so we gotta spoil the latest episode of She-Hulk. So if you haven't seen it yet and you're worried about that sort of thing, well, what are you waiting for? Get a move on!
All right.
Jen.
Blonsky?
You're honking your horn at a 10-foot tall lizard monster.
Okay, let's get into it, shall we? Titled The Retreat, this episode focuses on Jen checking up on her dear old client Emil Blonsky at his mindfulness retreat. Unfortunately, Jen is utterly incapable of being mindful of her surroundings because she is consumed by her massive crush on Josh, the guy she met at the wedding last week. Jen and Josh have been texting pretty regularly since the wedding, and based on her texts, Jen apparently lives in the 90036 zip code in Los Angeles, which covers a wide swath from West Hollywood to Miracle Mile. Based on her house, probably near the Grove. During their date at a taco truck, you can spot a QR code on the truck itself, and this leads to a free copy of 1959's Tales to Astonish number 48. It features the debut of the Porcupine, who we'll meet later this episode in all of his stanky glory.
It smells like a fart.
Too much.
Everything seems to be going pretty well for Jen, both personally and professionally. She's even been nominated for Female Lawyer of the Year, which will lead to a scene at a gala, which we saw in the trailers, to which Damage Control apparently also shows up, but not to collect an award, to collect bodies. Because they're bad people. Anyway, while she claims she doesn't care about intelligentsia and their weirdo death threat, she very much does care about getting ghosted.
Why can't he just text me back? Why is that so hard? There's literally no reason in this day and age to not respond to a text.
Now, as a quick reminder, intelligentsia is the message board full of weird dorks that want to kill Jen and or harvest her blood to make Hulks of their very own. In the comics, intelligentsia was actually a supervillain group comprised of evil geniuses like the Leader, MODOK, Wizard, Red Ghost, Mad Thinker, and Egghead. Now, particularly relevant to this show is the storyline where the Leader and MODOK turn General Thunderbolt Ross into the Red Hulk by using Bruce Banner's DNA in 2010's Hulk number 23. With Bruce Banner currently off in space in the MCU, they want Jen's DNA to make a Hulk of their very own, one they can control. More likely than not, Hulk King will wind up being Samuel Stearns, aka the Leader. We know he's returning to the MCU as the villain of Captain America New World Order after debuting back in 2008's Incredible Hulk. Well, either that or we're gonna get Ralph Bonered and it's just gonna be Todd as the Hulk King. You know, Todd.
Boner?
Boner.
While waiting for a text that never comes on Saturday night, Jen watches The Great Muppet Caper, which mirrors her mood as Miss Piggy hulks out to escape her prison cell. But rather than sitting around in a prison of her own emotions all weekend, Jen eventually makes her way out to check on Blonsky at Summer Twilights, his retreat on the land purchased for him by his 7 soulmates, who are conspicuously absent or maybe just in a separate yurt.
Love you.
Now, for a moment, it feels like Jen might get into another car accident the way that she's texting and driving. Fortunately, there's an ironclad legal defense if that does happen.
Just say you were texting 911, they can't prosecute.
Unfortunately, her car does wind up getting caught between 2 enhanced individuals sorting through their anger issues. Bull El Aguila. Bull debuted in 1971's Daredevil number 78. He kidnapped people off the street for the evil Mr. Klein, but Daredevil busted up their operation. That lab experiment that Bull mentions was when his boss forced him to undergo the treatment himself, turning him into a mutated Minotaur. And while Bull was most frequently associated with Matador, the brash bullfighter we see here is actually the smug swashbuckler El Aguila.
And before you make assumptions, no, I am not a matador. That would make the two of us fighting pretty cliché.
First appearing in 1979's Power Man and Iron Fist number 58, this Spanish mutant had the ability to create bioelectric energy charges from his body. It's a power that he's all too eager to demonstrate later in the episode after the group gets real riled up about Josh.
Right! That's awesome! Alejandro, you've been warned about using bioelectricity in group before.
Aguila means eagle in Spanish, hence the eagle emblem on his chest. Apparently, though, he gets real upset that people presume he's a simple matador, which is fair because we actually thought he was the villain Matador in our trailer breakdown previously because he's dressed like a matador.
He's working through some identity issues here.
I am not the one with the issues.
All right.
Although, in our defense, in his own words, he did do some light matadoring in college, which we also glimpsed during the credits. We meet some other certified goofballs in Blonsky's therapy group as well, including Porcupine, Saracen, and Wrecker.
I was hurting for a yurtin'.
First appearing in 1963's Tales to Astonish 48, Porcupine was originally an Ant-Man and Wasp villain. He wore a suit of armor capable of blasting quills at his enemies, which probably smelled just as gnarly as the version on the show.
How many hours a day have you been wearing that mask, Papa?
Saracen was one of the first vampires on Earth in the Marvel Universe, debuting back in 1999's Blade Vampire Hunter #1. And given the fact that we see Saracen outside during broad daylight, well, probably isn't actually a vampire in the MCU, just real into blood.
Because I bet Jen is pretty damn great.
Yeah.
And tasty. Oh. Damn it, went off the rails.
Now, last but not least, we have Wrecker, who Jen breaks the fourth wall to remind us exactly where and when we've seen him before.
Previously on this guy.
As a refresher on his comic lore, Wrecker was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby back in Thor 148, and he went from small-time criminal to construction-themed supervillain after his signature crowbar was imbued with magical Asgardian powers. He went on to lead the Wrecking Crew, giving the rest of his gang superpowers when his magical crowbar was also struck by lightning. You know, because comics. And although most of the folks in this room are villains in the comics, here they seem to be taking Blonsky's teachings to heart. Wrecker even apologizes for attacking Jen in episode 3, referencing how his magical crowbar was making him and the Wrecking Crew act like a bunch of total fools. Now, I'm sure that Hulk King and Intelligentsia are none too pleased about that apology, and I have to admit, I was definitely expecting this group to betray Jen when they convinced her to turn back into her human form. But I guess it turns out people really can change after all. Abomaste indeed.
Yeah. Brava. Great job.
When Jen deletes Josh's number from her phone book, there are a number of fun Easter eggs for members of the cast and crew. We see assistant editor Scott Jacobs, Luke Jacobson, who plays Griffin Matthews, the superhero Taylor, co-executive producer Wendy Jacobson, Shannon Justison and Sarah Pratt, who both work in VFX on the show, VFX editor Mike Kames, assistant editor Kelly Elisa Cunningham, Adam Kimmerlin, who's an editor that's worked on other Marvel projects, Doran Kipper is a data wrangler, and Konich is Rob Konich, a VFX supervisor. The tow truck that shows up is from Slott Towing, and the driver is named Dan. This is a reference to She-Hulk writer Dan Slott, whose 2004 run serves as a major inspiration for the show. And Dan Slott even weighed in on this adaptation on Twitter. Last but not least, the episode ends with a twist that we totally called during last week's breakdown. #JoshWatch. It turns out that Josh wasn't just interested in Jen for Jen's sake. Rather, he was preying on her insecurities to get close to her so he could get her blood sample without needing a vibranium needle to pierce her skin. And not only does Josh make a copy of her phone, but he also takes a picture of a naked Jen sleeping in bed and then messages Hulk King that he acquired a sample of her blood as well. And you know what? Maybe Blonsky's group was onto something when they said that Josh deserved a swift death.
All right, screw this guy. Where does he live?
Let's kill him. That's right, he's gotta die.
Anyway, with Jen's DNA in the hands of a bunch of certified creeps and just 2 episodes to go, things are going to come to a head in the next couple episodes. Fingers crossed we'll finally get the Man Without Fear next week, because things are about to get awfully scary for Jen in the meantime. Anyway, folks, there you have it. That's everything we spotted in the latest episode of She-Hulk. We'll have plenty of other deep dives for you over on Nerdist in the days ahead, but for now, tell us, what did you think of the latest episode of She-Hulk? Did you spot anything that we missed?
I think that we have to start considering the very real possibility that you were ghosted.
Or he wanted your blood.
Let us know in the comments below, and for the latest and greatest in the world of pop culture, make sure you stay tuned to Nerdist.com.